All right, it looks like we are ready. Looks like everyone is in from the waiting room. So hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Maryella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. This is our three-part series that we are so excited to bring back to Power to Fly. I'll get into some of that detail a little later, but I just want to kick us off by inviting you to join the chat. So go ahead and participate in the chat by letting us know where you are in the world. Go ahead and drop in the chat. Let us know where you're calling from today. And feel free to network amongst yourselves in the chat. We really want you to maximize this hour that you have with us. So you have full permission to connect, drop your LinkedIns, drop your emails, your projects, anything that you want to highlight and represent in the chat. Go ahead and do that. We'd love for you to participate. And just to let everyone know, we are recording live and be looking out for the rewatch email that we're going to send everyone to be able to rewatch this exact conversation that we're having. You can vigorously take notes there. We'd love for you to be participating, and closing your multiple windows that you might have open so that you can bring your presence to this conversation and ask any live questions as we roll in, really deep on some of these questions on how to resolve conflict in the workplace, which I know a lot of you are really eager to learn about. So be looking out for that rewatch email from Power to Fly, also from Grow Dialogue. And we'd love for you to, again, participate by writing in the chat. So I don't see anyone do. Okay, cool. Thank you, Laura, for warming up the chat box there. I was going to say, I see everyone here, but I don't see anyone writing in the chat. We really want you to participate. So shout out from Denver. I see Laura writing in the chat. I know that Soon-Jahta is calling from Atlanta. We got Seattle representing. Great. So continue to drop in the chat. And as you all do that, I will just briefly introduce myself if you have not joined a conversation where I have moderated before here with Power to Fly. So my name is Maryella Marie, again, originally from California. I'm currently living in Patagonia, Argentina, the original lands of the Mapuche people. And I really, really love these conversations because it allows me to grow more in my work. Some of the work that I do is I intentionally curate conversations around emotional intelligence, around belonging, around equity, inclusion, belonging, all these things that we're here to really invest our time in today. And I am a social impact producer. So I'm going to pass the mic to my colleague here in just a few moments, Soon-Jahta. Soon-Jahta and I have been working for the past couple of years on a lot of content that I'll drop in the link, I'll drop in the chat, with some helpful links so you can see some of the things that I've been producing with Soon-Jahta. He's one of the most brilliant people that I know, most kind-hearted soul that I know as well. So I really am happy that you all are here, whether you're here live with us or rewatching, because you're going to gain a lot of knowledge from Soon-Jahta. So I invite you all to go to either Grow Dialogue or the Positive Force team to get to know a little bit more about me. And maybe you'll get to know about me as well as I raise questions and also some of my own questions, as I know that you all have submitted a lot of questions as well. But I'll be raising some questions too, reflecting with Soon-Jahta as we co-collaborate what to do to make real change and impact in the workspace. So I'll pass the mic now to Soon-Jahta, Dr. Soon-Jahta, who's joining us from the Metro Atlanta area. For those who have not joined a chat where you have talked about, what your passions are, specifically, things like authentic dialogue, how to resolve conflict in the workplace, all the things that we're going to dive into in this next hour. Can you let folks who have never met you or heard of you before, let them know a little bit about yourself and why you do what you do, what makes you passionate about all of the things that you bring to this space here with us today. So Soon-Jahta, thank you for being here with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maryella. And before I get into it, I just have to say thank you for those kind words. And it's totally a pleasure to work with the creative soul, creative genius that is Maryella Marie. She's been a huge asset to my work and, just everything that we do at Grow Dialogue. And it's just been such a privilege to have met her through this Power to Fly platform and experience, and to have cultivated a relationship, a working relationship, a personal relationship, and I call her my creative partner. So thank you for those wonderful words, Maryella, and thank you for always doing what you do and just, facilitating in the wonderful ways that you do. And I know that we're going to be able to give the people some really, really exciting information to take away from their time with us today. And, to answer your question, what I'd like to tell people is that I'm someone who, I arrived at this point in my life, I arrived at doing this work because I just happen to be someone who sees through all the tension, all the polarization, and sees to the heart of all people. And I believe that at the heart of all people, there's a desire for connection. There's a desire to, collaborate. There's a desire for peace and harmony. And I always had that innate belief. And then I learned about a concept called authentic dialogue, which is a communication framework designed to help us leverage our differences, leverage our differing beliefs and perspectives to strengthen our relationships, as opposed to using our differences and beliefs and perspectives to divide, and which is unfortunately more common or has been more common in society. And ever since I learned about this framework of communication, I've just been an advocate for it. And it's led me into this space and doing this work in the ways that I do it today. I love people. I love humanity. I love, helping people communicate effectively and resolve conflict. And I'm excited to be here with you all and to share some of that with you today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Soon-Jahta. Thanks for the kind words. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And as I get these questions pulled up, Soon-Jahta, can you just shout out where folks are calling in from in the chat box here? I see a lot of people are joining us. So go ahead and shout out where folks are calling from today.
Sure. So let's see. Let me scroll. We have Denver. We have Seattle, Columbia, Missouri. We have Pennsylvania, my home city. I'm from Philadelphia originally. Maryella's in Argentina. We have Sunnyvale, California, Lansing, Michigan. What's up, Michigan? We have, let's see, Duluth, Georgia, English, near me. That's English Simone. Hey, English Simone. Brooklyn, New York is here. Chicago, Illinois. Miami, Florida. King of Prussia, PA. I spent many a days in the King of Prussia Mall growing up. Seattle, Washington. Iowa, Las Vegas, Brooklyn, New Mexico, the Tiwa lands. And I forgot to share, and I'm glad I forgot to share that I occupy the lands of the Muskogee Creek people here in the metro Atlanta, Georgia area, in the town I'm in called Douglasville. And these are the original lands of the Muskogee Creek people. We have Tampa, Durham, North Carolina, Fishers, Indiana, Chicago, Austin, Texas. We have someone in South Africa. Thanks for joining us from South Africa, Columbia, Missouri, Cleveland, Ohio.
Yes.
Thanks for everyone who shared.
Thank you, everyone. All right, so I'm going to ask our live audience, since they're already participating in the chat, to go ahead and drop a 1 in the chat if you're currently going through some conflict in the workplace that you're looking to resolve ASAP or like yesterday. So drop a +1 in the chat if you're currently going through some kind of conflict in the workplace and you're looking to resolve that ASAP. Drop a 2 in the chat if you're here more for like a preventative measure in order to understand how to resolve conflict should it arise in the workplace. So just to see where our live audience is today, looks like we got quite a balance. Lots of 2s, actually. All right. So lots of preventative work happening. And with that, I'll say, obviously this chat is eligible. You're eligible to receive SHRM credits. So we'll be dropping that in the chat soon. Paloma will be helping us out there by reminding us how to redeem those SHRM credits. And we have a couple of 1s in the chat. So it looks like some of you all are currently going through, someone wrote like a huge bolded 1. Great. So thank you for that transparency. I should also say, if anyone has any sensitive information during this conversation and you prefer to be kept anonymous, you can write to me or Soon-Jahta privately in the chat. You can write to us and we will highlight your reflection or your question and keep you anonymous there. So I know that some of this might be really sensitive, and especially those of you who are going through some conflict, currently in the workplace. So we really would love for you to, be able to work through that and resolve conflict. I'm going to be dropping some helpful links throughout this conversation. I'll go ahead and drop this one now, which is a form that will allow you, specifically those of you who are going through conflict right now, we'll be able to offer a complimentary conflict consultation. So, we'll be able to hear your current scenario, Soon-Jahta and I, and we'll give, our feedback on how you can walk through that conflict and the workplace. And if you aren't currently going through conflict in the workplace, you can still fill out this form to get a discovery call with us and Grow Dialogue so that we can see how we can bring this either to your personal life, as an individual or within your teams. So feel free to check that out. Now, before we get into our questions for today, again, I want to highlight this is part one of a 3-part career coaching series that we're doing with Power to Fly and Soon-Jahta here. So be sure to look out for part 2 of our conflict resolution that leans more into improving trust and collaboration in the workplace. And then part 3 of our conflict resolution series that speaks to co-creating a thriving work culture, where Soon-Jahta will share up a process that is called the change up process. So thank you for joining us today, but be looking out also for part 2 and part 3. And with that said, let's dive into these questions here. So Soon-Jahta, how can we begin co-creating a thriving work culture? I have aligned some questions that were previously submitted to kind of speak to this umbrella topic of co-creating a thriving work culture. So this first question reads, what do you mean by co-creating a thriving work culture, and why is it important today?
And why is it what today?
Why is it important today?
Why is it important today? It's a great question. And so there's some important key words in that title, co-creating a thriving work culture, which actually is like our flagship training program that we offer to organizations and business teams. And I would say the most important term or word in that phrase or that title is co-creating. And the whole idea of co-creating obviously is rooted in which is like collaboration, right? And doing things together. And, at the heart of the evolution of corporate spaces and workplaces is this idea of equity, inclusion, belonging, and diversity. And all those things point to collaboration. All those things point to the fact that each individual's voice matters. And in order to have a thriving work culture, it's important to have all the stakeholders that are participating in the work culture to have a voice and what that means and what that feels like. Because what you or I think is a thriving work culture can be totally different. But there's a process to go through of coming together and co-creating it where we all can find some common ground from which we can cultivate that thriving work culture. And then whenever there is, conflict or decisions have to be made, we have a foundation from which we can communicate from. We have, something to anchor us so that we can make what I like to say are values-based. We can have values-based conversations around conflict or creating and making decisions that's rooted in something that we all decided together. So at the heart of this whole co-creating a thriving work culture is being intentional about doing things together and setting those foundational elements in place from which you can, again, co-create from, which we'll talk more about in detail in the second and third part of this series. But that was a great question.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask you a personal question because I know you recently worked with Nike over in Amsterdam with, not the whole corporation you like to mention, this kind of work obviously is best when it's more intimate, when you have smaller groups working together. But can you personally just reflect on your experience, seeing a big corporation like Nike be intentional about co-creating a thriving work culture as you walk them through the process of how to do that. And I know that I'm throwing you an extra bonus question here, but just to bring the human back into the conversation.
Yeah, no, it was an amazing experience. It was a 2-year process over a team. Nike's a huge company. I believe they have like 75,000 employees, but we worked with a team, an international team that sat under a senior director that worked out of the corporate office in Portland. But this leader had teams in Asia, Asia Pacific, EMEA, which is Europe and the Middle East and Africa, as well as North America and South America and Central America. So we worked with 5 different geos And within this team, there were about 200 individuals. And we were able to take them through a process where 200 people got on the same page about what they wanted their team culture to feel like, how they wanted to show up for one another, how they wanted to proactively resolve conflict, et cetera, and what they wanted their core values to be as a team. And we have a process for helping to tease out these understandings and these what these things mean to one another. And then we consolidate that, and we're able to come up with a culture statement and 5 core values that everyone can see themselves in. And now, again, that set the foundation for them to have authentic dialogues when it was time to resolve a conflict or make a decision, or innovate together, et cetera. And, the feedback was just tremendous. We gave feedback surveys across the board. We received, 4+ out of 5 stars across the board in terms of just the impact and how meaningful it was. And even, several years later, we're still getting positive feedback in terms of how the team just feels more empowered to communicate authentically and transparently with one another. They're collaborating more freely. They have more trust in one another as well as in their leaders, because their leaders invested in them in this way, which signaled to them that their leaders cared about these things. So the returns have been awesome. And it was just a great experience all overall.
I love it. Thank you for sharing. So this question that comes up often, actually, I hear you speak about the fact that conflict is inevitable, that we are, as human beings, this is just a part of our, social experience. So this question reads, what happens if conflict is unresolved in the workplace?
Could you repeat that? I was reading someone sent me a direct message.
Yeah, no worries.
Hey,
do you
sorry.
want to speak to the direct message?
No,
first?
I
Okay.
don't have to speak to it, but can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So this question, I was just saying how you say that conflict is inevitable, as we are human beings, and just in order, in our social experience, we experience conflict. And so this question reads, what happens if conflict is unresolved in the workplace?
Yeah, typically when conflict is unresolved in the workplace, just like in our personal lives in any context, it tends to fester, and it tends to, this is the whole concept of sweeping things under the rug, right? It comes back up. It eventually will reveal itself. And the longer that we wait to address it, the more harm is done. And, our whole process and what we teach and with the authentic dialogue element that we're really getting into here today is really about being proactive. It's really about being intentional, about putting in, procedures and tools for conflict resolution before the conflict even arises. So we definitely, if you don't address conflict, it breeds resentment, and eventually it will deteriorate the relationship.
Yes, and we're seeing a lot of that just in general in our modern culture, in the workplace, outside of the workplace. So let's just dive into the power of authentic dialogue, because a lot of people have submitted questions that speak to using authentic dialogue versus debate. And I know a lot of people might have heard these terms, maybe they have not. So I just want to ask our audience, if you're familiar with authentic dialogue, go ahead and drop a 1 in the chat. If you are already familiar with authentic dialogue, drop a 1 in the chat. If you have no idea what authentic dialogue is, maybe you can, intuit what it is, drop a 0 if you've never heard of authentic dialogue. All right, and Soon-Jahta, please set the stage up here. Can you let us know, what is authentic dialogue? So this question reads, what do you mean by authentic dialogue? And what are the main challenges people face when trying to communicate with this approach?
Sure. And before I answer that, I noticed that someone talked about having trouble hearing. So I know that Paloma is in the background for any tech things. So maybe Paloma, you can reach out to that person directly, because it seems like most other people can hear us okay. So yes, authentic dialogue. I'll just share with you all, I had never heard of it prior to my doctoral studies back in 2009. And when I learned about authentic dialogue, I like to say that with that as well as systems thinking, learning about those two things, it was like night became day. I had this internal yearning to want to be a problem solver, to want to be solutions oriented, to not want to fight and argue, et cetera. But I didn't have the language, the words, et cetera, to like actually manifest it in ways that I gained when I learned about, authentic dialogue. And authentic dialogue is basically a communications framework. The same way that, debate is a communication framework, and discussion is a communication framework. We tend to conflate the three in the way we talk about them. Someone will say, let's have a dialogue, or let's have a discussion, or let's debate this. And they tend to, interchange those things, but they're not the same. So, some of the differences is like a debate tends to be oppositional, right? In a debate-based context, oftentimes, in order for me to be right, you have to be wrong. And we're coming to a debate with the idea that we have to win, right? And oftentimes in the debate, we're not listening to understand, we're listening to reply, right? We're listening to one up, to prove them wrong and us right. And debate just happens to be the dominant communication framework in our society. And, debate is rooted in all types of power over and control dynamics, because oftentimes, if you're talking to someone who is, has a level of power over you, whether it be historically, because I know some of these lines are beginning to, fade away, but historically, bosses had more power over, so they had the final word, or parents have the final word over children, or, men are the head of the household and have the final word when it comes to conflict resolution, issues within these various different types of relationships. And all those things are rooted in debate. Another time that debate tends to disadvantage some and privilege others is when someone who is really, charismatic, or let's say a quick thinker, and can like really speak really fast and make decisions and talk over people. And it may seem like they're winning within the context of, again, trying to resolve a conflict or make a decision in a heated situation, whereas some people are more reflective. They need time to think before responding. And oftentimes those people are disadvantaged in a debate-based context. But again, within our society, folks who are those quick thinkers, who can respond quickly and, talk over people and shut them down, et cetera, that skill set historically has been something that's been valued, especially in a lot of corporate contexts, et cetera. So those are some telltale signs of debate. Does that make sense? You all tracking? Okay.
Yes.
And let's see, I'm just freezing. Can you hear me?
Looks like you're a little frozen. Let me know if you all are able to hear. Okay, so you all hear me, but Soon-Jahta's frozen. Okay, let's give Soon-Jahta a chance to log out and log back in. So great. Thank you all for your patience here. And I also just want to highlight, so thank you for your transparency. It looks like in the chat, we've got a lot of zeros in the chat. So people who have not heard of authentic dialogue, and quite a few ones as well. So I hope that for those of you who have already heard of what authentic dialogue is, that this will be something that is still going to just add to your repertoire of how to engage in authentic dialogue a little more. And then for those of you who have not heard of authentic dialogue, again, I think, for the fact that Soon-Jahta said, when he was first introduced to authentic dialogue, it changed his world. So those of you who have not heard of authentic dialogue and now are for the first time hearing it, buckle up. It's going to be a great ride. And you're just going to be able to put this tool in your pocket for the future. Soon-Jahta, are you back? Yeah, great.
Yeah. So yeah, I see my internet was messing up. I'm sorry. Can you tell me what the last thing you heard was?
Yeah, no worries. We were just, you were speaking to, just the importance of, in our society now, historically speaking, debate has allowed for, you know, hierarchical relationships to have the final word. And so as things are shifting and more people are interested in having, let's say, you know, collaborating and co-creating together, why authentic dialogue is important. So yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Soon-Jahta, maybe you can connect to your
I did. I just
okay,
did.
great. I can hear you good
Oh,
now.
okay. Hopefully that solves the problem.
Good.
Okay. Yeah. So sorry about that, everyone. Thank you for your patience. So yeah, you know, I know I got into the idea of like debate being oppositional, and did I get into the whole idea of like the power dynamics between parents and children? Did you hear that?
Yeah, yeah, we heard
Okay,
that.
all of that. I'll just transition right into, you know, discussion. You know, discussions tend to be a more civil form of debate. You know, when folks say, I want to have a discussion, that just means, okay, I don't want to argue. I don't want tensions to flare like tends to happen in a debate when people are cutting one another off. But in a discussion, we're still trying to, you know, be right. We still want our perspective to be the one that is like, you know, held as the right perspective or opinion or decision. So it's just a more civil form of debate. Authentic dialogue is different, and the way that authentic dialogue is different is authentic dialogue is it's like a communication with a center and not sides. You know, in the debate and the discussion, there tends to be sides. Where authentic dialogue, it's like there's a center, overarching ideal or goal that we're trying to accomplish in any given context. Authentic dialogue is literally, as I said a little bit earlier, it's about leveraging our differences to strengthen our relationships. It's about listening to understand, even if it doesn't mean that we agree. I think a lot of times people get held up and wanting to debate or discuss, be in a debate or a discussion because it feels like if I listen to someone to understand, that means I'm agreeing with them. And authentic dialogue, a part of that is, you know, holding on to, you know, not having to fear that listening to someone to understand them means that you're giving up, you know, what you believe. There's a way to do both. Hold on to your beliefs and perspectives while also listening to understand someone and where they're coming from, because we come from so many different backgrounds and cultures and beliefs and perspectives that inform how we view the world. Authentic dialogue is rooted in empathetic listening. Is rooted. Okay.
We can hear you, Soon-Jahta. I'm just turning your video off so you can have more power on the audio there.
Okay, great. And it's rooted in tolerance, and tolerance being the capacity to, you know, hold that people will have differing point of views than you, and that's okay. You know, different views, different beliefs, and that's okay. And just being able to endure those differing beliefs and understand that we're all complex as human beings, and there's room for all of our values and beliefs. And then within those things, we can find some common ground to move forward with win-wins. And that's what authentic dialogue is all about.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you again, everyone, for your patience. Again, Soon-Jahta, I turned your video off so that we can hear you clearly, and it looks like it is a little better. Monica writes, love a value-based perspective. And let's see, Laura writes, the worst is when someone says they want to have a conversation in quotation marks, but when they get there, they are there to dictate or to debate what they want, and the other person's wants or needs don't matter. Would you like to reflect on some of those comments, Soon-Jahta?
Yeah. So one of the important things about authentic dialogue is that, you know, the people participating in it have to opt in. Meaning, if you show up to, you know, a conflict resolution scenario wanting to have an authentic dialogue, and the other person has no concept of it, it's not going to feel good. That we train it where you can show up to, you know, having a conflict resolution conversation with someone where they don't have the training, but you have to be trained and you have to understand how to do that, how to model it and ask questions in a way that will lead this person into an authentic dialogue. But the best case scenario and what we do with our teams and organizations is we train everyone on it so that you all can know and understand when some tension arises, someone can say, can we have an authentic dialogue about this? And everyone will be on the same page and knowing what that means. Because it does take effort to shift our mental paradigm from the debate-based context that's so ingrained in us and that we're so used to into the context of an authentic dialogue.
Absolutely. And I mean, I can just speak from my personal perspective and personal experience. I was never taught how to have an authentic dialogue in school, not in the workplace. I mean, it really wasn't until I met you, Soon-Jahta, and started working with you. And so as you're saying, it's a really big part of our so-called modern culture. The foundation of our modern culture is to see who's right, and see who's wrong, and to pick sides, and which creates polarization, which creates this binary separation, right? Instead of us coming together to figure out solutions together. So, and I see some folks in the chat are also writing that someone here wrote, Jessica wrote, I wish authentic dialogue was used among family members when discussing politics. Laura writes, the only hitch with this concept of authentic dialogue is that all sides need to agree with this. So thank you for bringing that up, Laura, because I think that's a great question, Soon-Jahta. I know a lot of people are asking, what happens when you have a manager on a team, or when you have basically your whole team has no idea about authentic dialogue, but let's say you do. How do you navigate that? So Laura saying, the only thing is that all people need to have authentic dialogue in order to do it. What do you say to that, Soon-Jahta?
Yeah, that's actually a great point. And that's what we're in a time and space in our history where we can be the change that we want to see in the world. And just by each of you being here and having these seats planted, those of you who this is resonating with, you can go on to learn it and then model it for the people you care about and in your personal relationships and your workplace relationships. And thank you, Sadi. I see that you talked about the family training that we have on our website. We also have an on-demand workshop for the workplace on our website as well that you all can watch, at your own pace. And with the workplace training, which of course, obviously these things can be adapted to any relationship, any context, right? Personal, family, as well as workplace. When you learn these skills and you learn how to model it for others, and I'm going to give you all an example here in a moment, but when you learn how to model it for others, you begin to shift the dynamics and within these relationships that you all are navigating in your day-to-day lives. And as I said, in the ideal world, yes, absolutely, everyone would have been trained on this, and in our family training, you sit down with your family, you can actually watch it, or even as a team, if you all, obviously teams hire us to come in and train it, but you also can gather your teammates and watch the on-demand version that we have at our website, or any other organization that may put on a training like this. If you have a level of influence, you can watch it, together with your teammates in that way. Or if you just watch the on-demand workplace authentic dialogue training, it teaches you how to have an authentic dialogue with someone who isn't trained on it. And I'm gonna give you an example of how that works. So let's just say that, Maryella and I were having a conflict, and, just conversation was happening, and I noticed that tensions were rising. Because I'm trained on authentic dialogue, my approach would be to shift the energy. My approach would be this. I would say, Maryella, I could tell that, you're upset and, about this, and there's some miscommunication. I don't want to argue. So can we have a dialogue about this instead? What would you say, Maryella?
I would say yes.
Right. So here's the thing, you all. Just by me asking that question and then pausing and waiting for Maryella to answer, Maryella has opted in to an authentic dialogue without even knowing it. She's opted in because of what I'm going to do next. Next, I'm going to say to Maryella, okay, can we listen to each other, hear each other out, and listen to each other, and then try to come up with a win-win solution?
I would say yes to that.
Okay, great. So I'll listen. And then, I'm sorry, I would say, can we take turns? It's important to say take turns. Can we take turns, speaking and listening and hearing each other out so that we can come to some, a win-win solution or something we both can agree to? And Maryella would say yes. And then I would say, okay, great, you go first. And then I would let Maryella talk. As Maryella is talking, I'm going to listen, my body language, and I'm not going to cut her off. And when Maryella is done speaking, I'm modeling empathetic listening at this time. So when Maryella is done speaking, I'm then going to ask an empathetic question, or I may, or I may reframe back to her what she just said, so that this signals to her that I'm listening intently. And if she can confirm that what she's trying to convey, that I'm understanding it in the way that she needs me to understand it, when I reframe it, and she says yes. And then I can ask another question and say something like, okay, so, why is this so important to you? I really want to understand, like, what's the underlying concern or the fear, or some type of empathetic question to give Maryella another chance to clarify, to make sure that I understand. And then when Maryella is done doing all of that, I'm going to say, okay, great. I understand where you're coming from. I understand the heart of, what has you worked up or upset in this moment. And I care that you're feeling this way. Can I share my perspective now? And can you give me some space and listen to me uninterrupted, like I just did for you?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Now I'm going to share my thoughts on this, and then I'm going to share my perspective and my feelings. And then, now here's what's going to happen. Sometimes people are so used to just jumping in and cutting each other off. That might happen. But guess what I do in those moments? I'll say, actually, you remember, I listened to you without interrupting. Can you do the same, please? And what do you think Maryella is going to say? She's going to say yes, because I'm modeling I'm de-escalating tension in all of my responses and the ways that I'm asking, right? And once I've shared my perspective, Maryella, say, if she asks me empathetic questions, which hopefully she will, because I modeled that. But even if she doesn't, I'm going to ask and say, do you feel like you have a good understanding of where I'm coming from? And Maryella's likely going to say yes. And then I'm going to say, okay, great. So can we, think about a win-win solution, or how we can move forward in a way that takes both of our perspectives into consideration based on what we both shared? And what would you say to that, Maryella?
Yes, let's give it a try.
Yes. Right? Nodding yes. And then we would just go back and forth, floating out solutions until we come up with something that we both agree on. And, so it's language like that. It's in the training, you make it your own. But that whole process is an authentic dialogue, because I did not engage in a debate, even if Maryella initially brought debate energy to the conflict discussion, or the conflict conversation. So that's a way that you can do it if the other person isn't trained on it. So I hope that helps.
Very, very helpful. And then Soon-Jahta, we just have a question in the chat. As sometimes the audio is going out, can you just reiterate some of the empathetic questions that you share, in the case that someone might jump in and, lean more into their debate or discussion mode, that, if they don't know authentic dialogue? What are some of the empathetic questions that you, as a person who knows authentic dialogue, can bring to that conversation where the other person might be trying to lean more into debate or to discussion?
Yeah, I could say something like, could you tell me a little bit more why, this is so important to you? That's an empathetic question. I could say something like, and how does that make you feel? And I actually have a document with a whole list of empathetic questions that I can send, that I'm going to email to you all as a follow-up to this training. But those are two examples of empathetic questions, and there's more similar to that.
Awesome. Thank you, Soon-Jahta. And again, I think it's just so important for you to not be discouraged if someone is coming in trying to, cut you at your knees and get you back into a debate or a discussion. So really leaning into the empathetic questioning, which Soon-Jahta was speaking about. If you can just remind them that that you did not interrupt them while they were speaking. So, a way to make that into an empathetic question would be, would you be willing to hear me out the way that I heard you out without interrupting? So that's another example of empathetic questioning. If you're feeling like, the other person is not there with you or wanting to go back into a debate mode, another empathetic question could be, if they do try to, finish or cut you off would be, does this make you feel good when someone, do you feel good when someone cuts you off? These are, you're not, I think if you really just lean into your intuition and really speak from your authenticity, you can come up with a million empathetic questions in this scenario. So of course, we're giving you some templates, and Soon-Jahta is also going to respond via email to all of you who signed up with some, points. Perfect. Sundiata put some in the chat, so I'll just read these out loud for those who are not in the chat now, who might be rewatching. So some more examples that Soon-Jahta has dropped in the chat for empathetic questions are: what do you need me to understand? Can you expand on your last statement, please? What do you need from me to feel better about this situation? Do you feel understood? Do you feel heard? Can you help me understand why that is important to you? And finally, how can I support you better? So again, I would love to see if anyone else has any empathetic question examples that they can add to the chat, because this is just going to help you feel just more confident in the scenario where you are showing authentic dialogue. And again, as Soon-Jahta is saying, modeling that for the other person who might not know how to do that. So they'll begin to hopefully respond to you, to your empathetic questions, and maybe even give some empathetic questions to you so that you all can grow in that way. All right, so let's move on here. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the beauty with listening empathetically and asking empathetic questions is that when people feel heard and understood, they get out of like fight mode, right? Or fight or flight mode, which tends to happen in conflict scenarios. Some people like to avoid conflict, and some folks like to go on the attack, tension arising. When you show up and de-escalate, and you totally make folks feel present and alive, and it's a totally different experience when it's approached this way. And when conflict is approached this way, again, a lot of times folks will be oppositional because they feel like that's just what I'm supposed to do based on our societal norms, but when you show up with the spirit of authentic dialogue, you'll know that some of those walls will start coming down, and people will be more willing to work towards, common ground and win-win solutions when they sense that you're coming to it with the spirit of authentic dialogue.
I love that. Thank you, Soon-Jahta. Okay, let's move on to another question here. So let's say that, authentic dialogue is happening. Conflict seems to be resolving in a way that is more easygoing, that, everyone is able to come to an agreement and feel heard and give consent. This question reads: how do you handle negative or offsetting comments that ruin the vibe of the room?
So again, I'm thinking, I'm obviously within this scenario that there is no context for authentic dialogue amongst the group of people, right? So if I was in a space like that, I'm not going to add to it. I'm not going to add to it. And I have language that I'm hoping that some of you are maybe gaining from just listening to this. And some of you may now go and learn more about authentic dialogue on your own, or you'll go to our website and take some of our trainings. And it's going to give you language where you can meet those challenges in an authentic dialogue, a spirit of authentic dialogue. So for example, if someone was doing that and I was in the space and this was a scenario where we needed to get to some type of goals, that we take an approach that is one where we listen to one another to understand one another, understand our underlying fears, our underlying concerns, our underlying perspectives and beliefs. And then once we all share those, can we then collect all of those things and try to tease out some common ground about with the decision? So just by using language like that, you're setting the tone for empathy and understanding instead of feeding into the divisive energy and the oppositional competitive energy in the space. And maybe with your new knowledge and your new language, you can shift the energy from competitive and oppositional towards collaboration. And it just takes time and just this awareness. And I'm sure some of you just hearing this conversation, you're becoming more aware, and you'll be, able to do just that.
Okay, thank you, Soon-Jahta. Okay, so should our conflict resolution approach change when dealing with clients or strategic partners? So I guess this question is, going from internal conflict resolution to external conflict resolution. Again, I'll read it. Should our conflict resolution approach change when dealing with clients or strategic partners?
No, because we're dealing with humans, and humans like to feel good. Humans like to feel understood, and you humanize people when you listen to them to understand. You humanize them when you show tolerance and empathy in any context. So it should remain the same.
I love that. Simple, but also complex response. Just we have to learn how to be better humans in this context. All right. So this next question actually, I think will be a nice follow-up to this one here that you just mentioned. Does your conflict resolution strategy change when it comes to remote and global teams?
Again, no, it doesn't. If anything, I would say you need to be even more intentional about, like, one of the things that we do with our clients is we facilitate monthly, ongoing, authentic dialogue sessions so that people can actually practice the skill, practice thinking together. And by practicing that skill, you're strengthening a muscle together, and you can address various issues, even if there's nothing glaring in the moment. By coming together to continually practice the skill, whether it be virtually or in person, you are proactively, proactively creating an intentional culture that is, about resolving conflict peacefully. So it's a must. It's a must that people do it consistently, because we're literally unlearning, again, decades of indoctrination around oppositional and competitive communication and conflict resolution. So it's important to practice the skill month in, month out, for teams and organizations who are really serious about shifting the culture.
Absolutely. And we have some comments here in the chat. English Simone writes, one thing that helps with authentic and effective dialogue is to speak, listen intentionally, and not impulsively. We have to learn to slow our thoughts and actions a bit. So thank you so much for dropping that in the chat. I think that actually speaks to what Soon-Jahta just said. Practice makes progress, we can say, because we can never be perfect, but in order to be able to listen intentionally, practice empathetic listening, empathetic questioning, bringing this up. Obviously, it's probably hard to do it within yourself, but if you can, have a partner that you practice with, or, like Soon-Jahta saying, join Grow Dialogue, where we are offering, opportunities to practice essentially, so that even if you're in a space in the workplace where people aren't opting in for authentic dialogue, or the team isn't, asked to develop this kind of conflict resolution skill, at least you as an individual can feel empowered, by being able to bring people into your space and not have to go into that, combative and toxic energy, which actually brings me to this next question here. So, a lot of people, unfortunately, aren't happy in their work, in their role, because of the toxicity that exists. People not listening to each other, mismanaging conflict in a way where burnout comes up, or people just feel like they aren't being heard. Gaslight situations are happening. So in that process, one might become, let's say, highly sensitive. Let's say they might become just ready to leave at any moment, or just ready to explode at any moment. So this question reads, how to help resolve conflict when you have strong personalities on one side and inverts on the other, and also when there is a highly sensitive person in the room. So again, when you're dealing with different personality types, whether it be strong personalities, as this is written here in the question, introverts on the other side, and highly sensitive people. So, you have just a ticking bomb, in the space where conversation might even be halted because of, people aren't being able to listen to each other. What would you offer this person who has submitted this question, Soon-Jahta?
Yeah. So again, what I would offer to this person is, this is an instance where this sounds like there's no psychological safety present. So there has to be some awareness brought to the team. That awareness is brought, it can be brought just through surveys, like their voice alone won't be heard. They can maybe do a company-wide survey around psychological safety, and I'm sure they'll be able to tease out some important data that can be taken to the team as a whole or to leaders to say, this is something that's missing, and it data out there around how creating psychological safety in a workplace is needed, and how it would benefit, organizational goals around, success. And then once that's made, once the awareness is created and made, then it's like, okay, here's a solution. And the solution that we offer would be teaching authentic dialogue and teaching teams how to have authentic dialogues, and more importantly, facilitating these authentic dialogues. Because as a third party that's not a part of the team, we can come in and we can hold space for making sure that everyone gets their voice heard, and we can set the context for creating that safe container or that site. And there's certain things that we do to do that. Okay. And once that happens, now, those people tend to, as I mentioned, fight or flight earlier, those people who tend to step back when there's conflict and try to avoid it, they'll feel more comfortable about speaking up. And those people who tend to speak over people, they'll take a step. Ultimately, at the foundation of all of this is, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Because again, when people feel like they're heard and understood, it increases feelings of belonging and feeling like they are included, et cetera. Just the whole process, everything that we teach has equity, inclusion, and belonging embedded in it, and diversity. Diversity can be looked at different ways, whether it be, physical characteristics, but also just diverse voices and diverse perspectives, et cetera.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Soon-Jahta. So we are having a bit of difficulty hearing you. I'm just going to go ahead and take us to our closing slide here to close out this presentation. As I mentioned before, we have part 2 and part 3 of our training that's coming up here with Power to Fly. And I believe that Paloma has shared that in the chat. So give me a thumbs up, someone, if you can see my screen share right now. Awesome. Great. Thank you for that signal. So again, you are able to receive SHRM credits from today's conversation. You'll see that code here at the bottom left. This is from Power to Fly. So thank you, Power to Fly, for offering this series up for our listeners here to be able to get SHRM credits. You will also be able to get extra SHRM credits with Grow Dialogue through things like our on-demand training that we have for resolving workplace conflict using authentic dialogue. I dropped the link in the chat earlier. That is for people who want to work as individuals. Maybe if your team isn't able to opt in and say, yes, let's all learn together, you can at least learn by doing this on-demand training, and you will be eligible for SHRM credits there if you take that training. I also dropped in the chat, I'll do it again before we close here, to fill out this form in order to receive either a conflict consultation if you are currently going through conflict. If in the beginning of this conversation you dropped a 1 in the chat and you need help ASAP, you need help yesterday helping to resolve conflict in the workplace, fill out that form and we'll be able to help you just by listening to your current scenario and then offering up some resources for you to navigate that in the workplace. We're also going to be able to give you a complimentary discovery call if you fill out that Google form. So maybe you already know that, yeah, my team needs this, or, just I'm ready to dive in deeper here. We'll go through just, some of the deeper processes that are required in order to gain this knowledge and bring it to your team there. Also, you'll be able to join our newsletter that you'll just be, in the loop on all the things that are coming up here with Grow Dialogue. So I just want to say thank you again. Thank you for your patience, everyone. I know that Soon-Jahta was having some difficulty with the technical difficulty that I'm sure we all have and hopefully you all were able to practice patience with us today through that. I'm just going to drop this form again in the chat here in case you didn't grab that earlier. So this form that I just dropped in the chat will allow you to get a complimentary discovery call or either be able to get some conflict consultation with us. So thank you so much, everyone. We're going to give you some time back today. So hopefully you can go and look at the sky or go walk around and get out from in front of your computer. We'll see you on part 2 and hopefully on part 3 again with this Power to Fly series that we're hosting with Soon-Jahta here. Thank you, everyone. And good luck resolving conflict in healthy, holistic ways. Let's be the change that we want to see, everyone. See you later.
Bye, everyone.